Well, first off, I want to thank you for
Thank you
being willing
for
to come out, and do this interview with us. So
Oh,
very
you're
much.
more than welcome, Jacob. Looking forward to it.
So I thought it'd be a kind of important to start off. What inspired you to get into music and create the rock band Head East?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I really wasn't going to do music as a career. I played the piano and trumpet since about the fourth grade. But what happened, which is really interesting, is the seed kernel for the band came out of a Share the Fun skit for the 4-H clubs. And we
Mm.
dressed up like a bunch of folks from the Appalachian Mountains and had our big overalls on and played, kazoo and this and that and the other. And I played the guitar, and we did a bunch of kumbaya campfire songs. And then we said something about, boy, we hear there's this newfangled music in the big cities. And I went into All My Lovin' by the Beatles on the guitar, and the place just started screaming and going crazy. And I go, wow, this is not too bad. I think I could learn to enjoy this. So from there, we put together a little sock hop band back in the long before your time when sock hops were a big deal at schools. Started playing some sock hops, and then began playing in some of the teen centers. Those teen centers were still a really big thing. And so we named the band the Timations, and that was kind of a popular name back in those days with all the R&B stuff. And it wasn't until August 6th, 1969, on a Monday, that we officially became Head East down at the Golden Gauntlet in Carbondale, Illinois. We changed the name overnight because our drummer at the time, his mom was extremely religious, and we couldn't play any place that served alcohol. And this was our first gig in a big time college club. And so we decided to change the name something more appropriate over the weekend. And that's when we became Head East.
That's
Oh,
cool. That's really cool.
nice.
Yeah, well, Maya.
Um, Another question. What band or artist inspired your style of keyboard playing?
Actually, a couple of things. Number
Okay.
one, I played in church all the time. In
Mhm.
fact, the organ I played in the rock band was the kind of church organ that you would see that I actually played in church. I got it because it's got a great sound. It's got more bottom to it. And then the other thing that influenced my keyboard playing a little bit, especially when I went to the synthesizer, was when I played trumpet. And so I had that kind of melodic background to it. And then I played in the university marching band, just a lot of influences, played classical, played big band, and et cetera, et cetera. So all that kind of melded together.
That's
Yeah,
cool. Yeah.
cool.
So when it came to writing songs, how did you guys typically come up with the ideas for your song? Did you and your bandmates have like a certain writing process you would go through each time?
Actually, in our group, we didn't necessarily write collectively like a lot of people do. We did have some co-writing went on, but most of the songs the guys came up with themselves. At least 90% of the song, and it was all about a lot of it about personal experiences that we were going through, ideas we had. Cheftown Creek was about the first time Steve Houston went out and drank wine and did the herb, which is legal now, of course, and those kind of things. So mostly personal experiences the guys went through, we turned into songs.
Awesome.
And a question to kind of piggyback off of that. Um, did your band like all know each other, or like how did you guys meet to then like collectively get together?
Well, getting back to the 4-H contest, this was a different contest. The drummer Steve Houston and I that started the band both won essay contest, Egyptian Electric Co-op contest that provides the electricity and power for the farm communities. And we won a trip to Washington, D.C. And we both played in the local bands at the time and met up in Sandoval, Illinois, and then went to Springfield and went out to Washington, D.C. And by the time we came back, we decided we'd leave our little bands and start a new band. And so I brought my brother Larry with me, and Steve brought John with him from his little band. And that's when we became the Timation. But the first song, speaking of the Beatles, the first song I ever heard Steve sing, we were sitting along the banks of the Potomac River with a couple of gals, and I was playing the guitar, and he grabbed it, and he sang a song by the Beatles called Anna. And I go, boy, this guy's really talented, and we need to play
Mhm.
together. And so that was the story of how then we made the next step toward becoming Ed East.
Yeah. Cool.
That's really cool. So, one of your guys' biggest hits, I realize, has Never Been Any Reason. What do you think it was about this song that kind of resonated with fans more than some of the others?
Well, a couple of things about it. Number one, it's an incredible dance song.
Yeah.
A lot of local bands still play it, and it's their last song of the night. You know, you always save your best song for last, and you want to see everybody out on the dance. People still dance like they used to, and so that was number one. Number two, I played the Moog synthesizer on it, and back then, almost no, only Keith Emerson and me would play the Moog at all. So it was a brand new sound, and so the intro of the song really catches everybody. That, and then the lyrics, everybody loves singing along with the lyrics. It's just. And besides that, another interesting aside, AC/DC, when they first toured in the United States of America, they opened for us on about 3 or 4 shows,
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
that's
and
really cool.
they wrote Highway to Hell based on hearing Never Been Any Reason. Gave them the idea for rhythm, gave them the idea for Highway to Hell.
I can kind of hear that now. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was pretty nice. They talked about it in their book about them, and they were great guys to work with, and that was a nice compliment. And by the way, I like playing music better than I like being a James Scholar in engineering at the University of
Huh.
Illinois. So I left college after my second year because I had the music bug by then, and went on. I thought I'd probably only be doing music 6 or 8 years, and I'd probably go back to college because I always wanted to get my doctorate degree and teach in music, and I've ended up being 50 years in music. Although in 1995, I did go back to school and go straight through and get my doctorate, and taught at St. Louis University and SIU Edwardsville.
Okay,
That's
cool.
really cool.
Yeah, I
So
guess
I gotta live two dreams. I'm
Yeah,
yeah.
really.
very blessed guy.
I guess we kind of skipped over this a little, but background wise, have you always lived in Illinois since you went to U of I, or where? Yeah.
No, once uh, in 1975, when Flat as a Pancake came out on A&M Records, it was released initially on our own label and was already a hit in St. Louis and Kansas City.
Okay.
But when it came out on A&M Records, our management company was in St. Louis, so we moved to St. Louis, out in the suburbs, out in Baldwin. We had 2 houses out there and a rehearsal space, and so we operated out of St. Louis from 75 to 1980. And then in 1980, I lived a couple of years in Los Angeles. And in 1990s, I lived in Boulder, Colorado, and I've spent a little time in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Hello.
didn't move back to Illinois officially. I started coming back to the family farm in the early 80s, but I didn't officially come back until I started school back in 1995, and I've been here full time ever since.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Going on tour a lot. Did you have a favorite venue that you've played at?
Mississippi River Festival, hands down.
That's cool.
I'm sure you've heard a lot of stories about it. It was one of the most unique venues ever in the United States, and it was just great. I always like doing the big outdoor shows. I mean, we played at Busch Stadium, and we played at Kansas City Royal Stadium, and played at Arrowhead Stadium, and played the Cotton Bowl, and Los
Wow.
Angeles Coliseum, and Milwaukee Stadium.
Mhm.
So, but one of the things I really like to do these days is play some of the smaller venues that are everywhere from about 500 or 600 to about 2,000 or 3,000, because it's a lot more intimate with the crowd. You can
Mhm.
really see the fans, talk to them after the shows, and we can do some of the songs that we weren't able to do when you're in big outdoor shows. You can't do some of your more subtle music because it just gets lost.
Yeah.
It's
Cool.
really cool. So I noticed that you guys tend to go on tour with other bands like Kansas, Blue Oyster Cult, REO Speedwagon sometimes too.
Sure.
Which one of these is like your personal favorite bands to go on a joint tour with?
Dave Mason, Foghat, who we're playing
Oh,
with this
Foghat, yeah.
weekend. We've known for our first big show on the road was in San Diego with Foghat and Jay Giles band. Our first big jump off on a tour, and that was in late '75. And so we're with them this weekend. Uh, but always like Foghat, those guys. Sticks, we played a lot of shows with. They're friends of ours. Sheep Trick as well. We played with Aerosmith, Fleetwood Mac, Jethro
Oh,
Tull. I mean, you name it. We were very blessed. We were with one of the biggest agencies in anywhere, which is called Premier Talent, and we were able to play with the biggest bands going, and that was really special. We got a Queen, they got to do 3 shows with Queen, so we were very lucky. Played with just about everybody from back in the '70s.
Mhm.
Not so many of the hair bands and stuff. We played with some of them, but now it's a different music business. But anybody that was touring in the '70s, we played with them.
That's
that's really
awesome.
awesome. Yeah.
That's cool.
Big 70s nerd over here. So that's just all the names you were listing. I was like, wow.
Well, I tell you, I always talk to people when they ask me about how it was like in the '70s, and I go, "Have you ever seen the movie The Golden Age of Hollywood?" And if they say yes, and it's a movie that shows old clips from the Keystone Cops and Charlie Chaplin and all those people when Hollywood was just starting to get really big. And I said, that is what the music business was like in the 1970s. And that's why we're back now as classic rock, because that was some of the best songwriting going. Songwriting's all disappeared in the music business now.
Yeah.
It's all about videos, but that was the best songwriting. So good for you. And there was you could do a lot of different things with music that you can. It's pretty straight formatted now.
Yeah. I would agree there.
So
Well, good, because Jacob, it's people like you that'll keep us around being classic.
yeah, there
Because
you
in
go,
the
Jay.
Oh,
from
yeah.
as we got into the '80s a little bit until the early '90s, of course, we were dinosaurs, and then all of a sudden we became classic, and so that was kind of a weird trip. You go from being really big, and then all of a sudden you're out of vogue because something new comes in. And then if you stick around and the times are good, and you did good work in the first place, then you come back to life.
The circle of music just rotating around there. Yeah.
That is correct. That's why our last album's called Full Circle.
Oh, yeah. I did notice that. Yeah. That's really cool.
That had a lot to do with it. And you had another question that you sent to me about the sound of the band, and what did I do? Because we went through a period, because the original, what everybody calls the original band on A&M Records, uh, our last show together at that point in time was April 20th back in 1980 at Kearney State University. So the next bunch of years, I had some really good bands and some really good people, but I never really got back to what I considered the Head East sound. And I really didn't get back to that until the guys that are with me now that have been playing with me for about 18 years. They're all from Kansas City, do a wonderful job. Darren Walker, the singer, sounds exactly like John Schlitt, the original singer. They could be twins. And we got back to the original Head East sound, and you can also hear that. That's the other reason the album's called Full Circle, because I finally got back to where I wanted to.
That's so
Like,
cool.
that's a
I
cool
like that
story. Yeah.
story. Yeah.
It
Um.
was a journey. People don't realize it's really hard to find that sound and that combination that works. And bands don't last. Even the Beatles, once they got bigger, didn't last very long. I mean,
True.
5 or 6 years for bands is a long time for most bands. Then a few of us that are really lucky either are able to hold it together or able to find another combination that has the same sound. And so 50 years because this will be the 50th anniversary of Flat as a Pancake.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I know people can't hardly get songs to stick around 50 months anymore, let alone 50
Yeah.
years.
That is very true there.
Are you planning to do anything, like, big for that 50th anniversary?
Uh, well, just go out and celebrate
Yeah.
the record. I mean, the 50th anniversary in and of itself. We have done a few shows. Uh, Unfortunately, two of the original guys, well, three of the original guys have all passed away, but two of them were still alive 2 years ago. And we got the band together for about a half a dozen shows and just celebrated the 50th anniversary of the band getting together. And we did a half a dozen shows with that. But the only two guys left now are John Slint and myself. And we play once a year at the Wildwood Springs Lodge down in outside of Steelville, Missouri. A nice
Okay,
small venue. It's a
yeah.
very special place. And so we still celebrate the record. But for the 50th anniversary, we'll do two shows. One will be just all Flat as a Pancake, and then the other will be a lot of the other stuff we do.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome.
Um,
Yes.
okay. What was it like for Hetties during the transition from vinyl to the rise of CDs and the digital age?
Um, well, for one, back in the 70s, you didn't make any money touring at all. You made all your money from selling records.
Hmm.
And so, but people all tour because that's how you sold your records. You toured, you got radio airplane, people bought your records.
Mhm.
Now in the transition from albums to CDs didn't have a big impact. The transition from CD, by the way, CDs are going to be like the old 8-track cassettes. They're going to be gone. You're not going to see CDs much longer. But the digital age is really different because now everybody downloads.
Mhm.
And so people don't record albums anymore where you try and put a whole album together with 10 or 11 songs and people throw the album on and listen to the whole thing. Now everybody downloads the individual songs they like and they do it streaming wise. And so it's a whole different business now. And so now you don't make as much money off your recordings,
Yeah.
but now there's ticket sales are ridiculously expensive
Yeah.
because of the VIP tickets
Mhm.
and stuff. So now everybody makes their money playing live.
Yeah.
So it's a radically different business. The one thing though about streaming is you can come up with one good song and you don't necessarily have to worry about getting all the money together to do an album. If you're lucky, you can go viral for some reason or somebody picks it up. So the digital age, it's all about viral, and so it's very different. And I'm not a fan of it.
Not a fan.
I wasn't a fan of MTV when it came along. I said it was going to
Okay,
change
yeah.
music. It was going to radically change the music business in the dance.
Oh, it definitely did. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there.
So now it's all about videos.
Yeah.
So that of course that makes the cost of everything go up even higher. So
Mhm.
it makes it tougher on the artists.
So I take it then you're not a big fan of like Spotify or Apple Music right now.
Well, I saw that as your question. And that's not totally true. I mean, the digital market is what it is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And Spotify and Apple have made that available to everybody. And I do get royalties from Spotify and Apple.
Okay.
They're not as good as the royalties when people were buying
Yeah.
albums and CDs. But back in the 1970s, there wasn't much of an international market. Almost the whole music business was in the United States and maybe England. Now, with Spotify and Apple and streaming, the United States isn't even as big as some of these other places. I mean, the European market's big, South American market's big. I mean, that's why all of a sudden you're starting to see Brazilian pop stars and pop stars have converted, the Latin influence is becoming bigger because it's so rhythmic. Um, they've opened the music to everybody around the globe. So it's I don't I wish it was back in the older days when we did albums,
Mhm.
but streaming is where it's at. And if you got to have streaming, Spotify and Apple do a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Though vinyl is starting to come back a little bit though, I've realized in these recent years.
That is correct. Because, first of all, back in the 70s, people loved going to record stores, looking at album covers, which were really neat, reading the album covers. And if you had a good album, take it home and listen to the whole album instead of just listening to the one or two cuts that you want to hear. And the other thing about albums is actually, if you have a really good stylus and a really good sound system, that is the best, purest way to listen to music.
I would 100%.
Digital is not as pure as what the old, even though they said it was going to be, it is not. It still flavors the music. So a lot of people are getting back into vinyl. We see some of our vinyl sales have picked up, and the Full Circle albums on vinyl. That was a big deal for us going with that company. We said we got to have vinyl. So, but you're correct. Vinyl's back, and CDs are down once again.
Oh yeah. Quite a
Yeah,
bit.
yeah. While you're looking for a question, one of the things that I would like to pass on to your listeners is I'm probably a great example of, as you go through life, sometimes totally unexpected doors open. And if they do, you have to be aware of them, know that something just opened, see if you want to jump through. And sometimes sometimes it's a risk. I mean, it was a risk for me. I left a big scholarship. Didn't make my family very happy. But then when we had a big hit record, all was forgiven, shall we say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But I had just never, ever thought, I just played music for fun, because I enjoyed it. Never, ever thought about it being a career. And all of a sudden I got the bug. And the other thing about being in the 70s, well, 69 is when we first started, there was a lot happening in the United States back then culturally. And a lot of change was going on in the country. And music was right in the middle of it. And that was very exciting. And I was really happy to be a part of that too. But people just sometimes you got to take a chance, and all of a sudden, an unexpected door open, and don't be afraid to jump through it.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Is there a band that you have seen live that resonates with you or inspires like your guys' music or the way you play or perform?
Oh, actually, we're a big vocal band. So a couple of the old time bands that really sang good was like the Lovin' Spoonful, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Three Dog Night. Um, let's see, I was good. I just Vanilla Fudge, really old time band, just had incredible vocals, and so and we're one of the better vocal bands in the country. So those bands definitely had an influence on us as far as how we structured our singing and harmonies and everything. Big time.
Yeah. Um,
So, what are some of your other favorite memories just from being with the band Head East in your rock career?
Oh, the time that we still own the record for the largest traffic jam on Interstate 44 in history.
Oh,
When
wow.
we played at Six Flags, I think it was '76. They had what they called a senior night at Six Flags, and we were playing for it. But we were so hot that everybody went crazy, so they opened it up to all the high school students and everybody. And traffic was backed up for over 20 miles.
oh my
Oh,
goodness.
And
wow.
we made the front page, of course, the Post Dispatch and Little Bird, and it was just huge. And that was incredible. Everybody asked us about that show all the time. One of the other big deals was we played the first Texas Jam in the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, and that was for 104,000 people. We made Walter Cronkite the 6 o'clock news. That was really neat. And another thing about Dallas, when you asked me about favorite places to play, back then they had a venue called Dallas Alley, and we were down in the midst of an old brick warehouse area with 3 and 4 story brick buildings all around, and they had that all cleaned out and cleared up, and a big stage. And we played there every year, and it was outdoors in the summertime. It was just that was the bee's knees.
Mhm. Awesome.
Sounds like it.
Well, we have to, I think our Zoom call will end soon. So as we're wrapping up, do you have any, does Head East have any, vision on where they plan on going? Or they just, I don't know what I'm asking. Just like in the
Well,
next couple of years, do you have
There you go.
goals? Yeah, I don't
yeah,
know.
well, Full Circle just came out. As far as where we're going, obviously the next year is 50 years of Plaza Pancake.
Yeah.
I'm going to be 76 years old here in about 50 days. So I've been on the road for almost 55 years. So that's a long time.
Yeah.
But I still enjoy it. I still love it. And the guys have been with me for 18 years are the best. And so and we just did a Christmas album.
Oh,
The guitar player put it together, and not we didn't play on every track, but and he put together a bunch of old songs and then wrote a couple new songs, and it's really nifty, and that's coming out right now. And we're selling it at our shows, and all the money goes to like part of the money's going to St. Jude's Children's Center, and then some of the money's going to some of the Kansas City foundations. So, and then we're talking about another album. I'd kind of like to do an album called Tale of 10 Cities, which is kind of like a takeoff on the book Tale of Two Cities,
okay, yeah.
and do songs like Sweet Home Chicago from all the big cities
Oh
we
yeah.
played at. Um, and St. Louis Blues and New Orleans Ladies by Louisiana LaRue. And so pick 10 great songs from going back to Miami by Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders, and do that. So that we'll probably do that. I don't know if we'll get to it this summer, maybe next winter.
Yeah, awesome.
That sounds really cool. Can't wait for that.
Well, we look forward to it, and so glad to hear. We're starting to see more and more folks your age come out to the shows because classic rock is really kicking back more into the mainstream. I mean, we're not going to catch up, obviously, with Beyonce and Taylor Swift and those folks because that's where it's at today.
Yeah.
But we still have a foothold in the market, and like to think we help make people's lives better. They can throw on our album and enjoy it, and especially with us because we're a good time up tempo band. So if you're feeling a little bluesy, throw on some Head East Plaza Pancake, and you'll feel better instantly.
Well, Roger, we appreciate you taking the time out again, and doing this all amidst the confusion and stuff. But
Oh, that's fine. No confusion. And stuff like that happens all the time. Been happening for decades and decades and decades. So thanks a ton, Maya. Thanks a ton, Jacob. And good luck on the rest of your
thank
podcast.
you.
Hope all your listeners out there really enjoy it.
All right, thank
Thank
you
you very
again.
much.
Good luck too.